this the right way round. I think the front end is an E-Class and the back end is a C-Class. In the 80s, we called that cut and shut.
Like a mullet. Business at the front, party at the back.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Evo Podcast, which I've written down as episode 11. So I hope that's correct.
Sounds plausible.
Sounds about right, doesn't it? Happy New Year to everyone. It's the first one of 2025. We'll just go straight into what we're going to do this year, because we've not been doing anything for the last 2 or 3 weeks, apart from John's been getting lemon curd and biscuits for Christmas.
He's been raiding the food bank in the supermarket.
Birthday. So 2025, what's that going to bring us? I think there's quite a lot of change on the horizon. We've got new governments that have said they're going to stick with 2030, and that's happening. But now they're going to do a consultation, so clearly it won't happen.
I don't believe them.
You cynic. But that doesn't seem to be stopping manufacturers from just ploughing on with what they need to do, because there's quite an extensive list. Yeah, they have to crack on with stuff, and I think the list we've produced of cars just for this year looks quite exciting. So let's rattle through them, starting with Aston Martin, because we've already seen it, the Valhalla, mid-engine V8, first sort of that whole new
Well, it's the first
era,
proper plug-in hybrid, isn't it?
Yeah.
And first, not series production, but more of a line-produced car than Valkyrie, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and they've come off the back of a massive year last year, didn't they? With
the whole front engine range revamped extensively, and then a whole new sort of production concept and sort of series car. It's quite exciting time for them. New CEO in Adrian Hallmark as well, which he's sort of got quite a challenge, I think. I think everyone who ever takes on Aston Martin's got a challenge, but they've got the product mix. Do we think
I think so. I mean, they're on a high, aren't they? I think the cars are fresh and seem to be better and better each, from DB12 to Vantage to Vanquish.
Yeah.
You really got an understanding of what the cars are now. Formula One, you never know, do you? You kind of hope. I think everyone's looking to 2026, aren't they?
Yeah, and they've got Adrian Newey for 2026, which is quite a handy person to have on the drawing board.
Yeah,
lots to be excited about there. I mean, we're going to touch on some of this in our sort of motorsport chat a bit later, aren't we? But as a brand, I think Aston, they've got more to be excited about and positive about than most, haven't they? With F1 programme, freshest road car range on sale, haven't they? Brand new model coming out. Le Mans programme, established GT programme, new boss.
Yeah,
spending plenty of cash, aren't they?
Spending a lot of Lawrence's cash, but they seem to have got to bring in the right people in, whether it's Newey in Formula One, Adrian, what he achieved at Bentley.
And JLR before that.
And JLR, he knows that customer base of what they want. So hopefully it gives them that really strong platform, probably the strongest they've had since the IPO, and probably before the IPO, isn't it?
I think probably forget about Amadeo Felisa as well. He's quietly took over after Tobias Moers, didn't he?
Yeah, and steered the ship really.
Steadied the ship a little bit, and is always kind of a guy that seemed to be in the background, never pushed himself to the forefront, but I think he should get some credit for...
Yes. Yeah, you certainly wouldn't have this product portfolio, I don't think, if you hadn't steadied that ship, because it was so disruptive after Tobias went in.
Well, they've just had a constant churn of people, haven't they? And when you get a new boss, you get new people.
The new ideas and new direction.
Bedding in period.
I think Adrian's a proper car guy as well, isn't he? And has come from a background of in a market that's relevant to Aston, but I'm sure he's looking forward to being part of a kind of proper sports car brand after Bentley's much more luxury biased, isn't it? So
James has raced against him.
Yes,
and beat him.
It was his first ever race, so I should qualify that a little bit.
They all count.
They all count. Yeah. Still.
Yeah, I'll let you do the first interview with him then. What do you think the mid-engined Aston Martin is going to be like? What should it be? Because they've only ever done really low volume bespoke stuff.
You can't really take much from Valkyrie, can you? Because it's so out there and extreme that it's hard to imagine that will inform. I mean, visually there's clearly a connection, because that was the thing I guess Aston had most influence over with Valkyrie, was how it looked. They've carried some of that over with Valhalla.
you've driven Vanquish, Johnny. The newest car, do you see anything from Vanquish you'd like to see in Valhalla, or you think they should try and adapt?
I think the main thing from Vanquish is that it's absolutely fit for purpose. It nails the brief. So what I was wondering was who would they have benchmarked in developing the Valhalla. I think McLaren has got to be in there, but there's quite a strong sense of sportiness come into the lower end of the range, isn't there? With the
Vantage is more sort of responsive than ever, isn't it?
Yeah, so I can't imagine that they're going for the same sort of blend of comfort and performance as McLaren tend to go for.
I think it's interesting that the first thing you said is it's an Aston Martin that's really fit for purpose with the Vanquish, but you kind of know what that is with a front-engine GT, whereas this is new ground for them, and we kind of don't know how a mid-engine Aston should feel. It makes more sense now. They're strong in Formula One, whereas for years maybe it wouldn't have made sense to have a mid-engine Aston Martin in previous years. Now it ties in much more with the wider brand.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, John, you want that blend, don't you? It needs to be very confident in its own thing of what it wants to be, but you do need to look at McLaren and Ferrari and other mid-engine cars, because that's what that sector sort of kind of thrives on, isn't it? They are always quite close just because of the nature of the layout of the car, but you need to put your own stamp on what makes it an Aston Martin, because we know what makes a McLaren and what makes a mid-engine Ferrari feel like a mid-engine Ferrari.
Yeah, that is a challenge, I think, because you're breaking new ground, aren't you?
And I often think of Aston Martins as feeling quite solid and heavy, not in a bad way, but it's sort of that's part of their character, isn't it? That's sort of, whereas a mid-engine car, you want it to feel quite light and nimble and agile, which is...
Well, you said Maserati with the MC20. They had MC12, but that was more like Valkyrie in some respects, wasn't it? That couldn't influence MC20, but that turned out to be a car of the year winner.
Yeah, I think it possibly helps them that they're coming in straight away with a hybrid, so it's not like we've got used to lighter, simpler. They don't have to translate whatever they applied to a previous mid-engine generation. They've come straight in with something that's looking at the spec sheet with the front axle torque vectoring, and it's similar in some ways to a Revuelto or something.
Yeah,
or maybe F80, but not as extreme as F80. So. And it's going to be very torquey, isn't it? Because all hybrids are. Yeah. So I think you can get a sense of what it might feel like. But I think it's all those cars are quite emotional things, aren't they? So it's almost how it makes you feel as you walk up to it informs how you feel when you drive it. So I think from what we've seen stylistically, it looks how you might imagine a mid-engine Aston to look. They haven't sort of done this weird thing that doesn't make any sense. I think if you saw it parked with the family of other Aston sports cars, it's going to fit in, isn't it? So
the question is where it's going to fit in price wise, and also who's it going after. It's not the intention surely is not to take sales from Vantage.
No, I mean it's a much higher price point, isn't it? So
how do you persuade people to get out of a Ferrari or high-end McLaren or a
guess this
Lamborghini?
Is the stuff Mr. Hallmark is really busy thinking about.
What's your USP?
I think there's curiosity, isn't there? I think if we know between us, we know lots of people with the money to indulge the purchases we'd all like to make. So I guess if you've been raised on a diet of Ferraris and McLarens, and you'd probably be quite interested to try something and not be in the cars that everyone else is driving, but then it needs to deliver to hold on to those
it's also
people afterwards, doesn't it?
Those customers as well that have not ignored but haven't considered Aston Martin because it's only ever been front engine cars, and they're in that supercar mid-engine world, and now you've got something to offer them, but they've got a huge amount of experience with Ferraris, McLarens and other established mid-engine cars, so you've got that challenge to get over as well. But as we said, they've had the people come through the door that are getting, that current range of front engine cars is the best they've had for generations.
Valhalla's tricky, isn't it? Because it's been through a lot of iterations and a lot of bosses, and the people that probably first put their deposit down however many years ago it might be, 5 years ago or 4 years ago or something, maybe
Six
more.
or seven,
I don't
wasn't it?
know.
Yeah. Don't think about it.
It's changed quite a lot since then. They got right to the point where they had their own V6 engine developed, and then that was knocked on the head. So it's had a bit of a troubled start. But I guess if you look at McLaren's struggles with selling the more affordable stuff in sufficient volume, they never seem to struggle selling the P1s and W1s and Sennas, but they do. It's quite a tough ask to sell thousands of
Arturas,
200,000-400,000 pound mid-engine cars. So maybe coming in at a million pound plus mark with a slightly smaller volumes, that might be the way to go, given that they're underpinned by all the other
models,
front engine cars as well.
Yeah. Well, talking of 7-figure mid-engine, very low volume cars, we should drive. It's Alfa Romeo, so who knows? But the 33 Stradale this year,
which is an MC,
which is an
MC20, isn't it?
Maybe.
Ish. Well, it's not a bad place to start, is it?
No, exactly. And it looks absolutely out of this world.
Yeah, it's great looking,
doesn't it? It's a mega looking thing. So
they completed the first customer car just before Christmas.
Yeah.
There was a release about it. It does look pretty fantastic. It
Yeah,
looks similar to the concept.
Yeah, it stayed true, hasn't it, to that car they showed. That was
over a year ago.
2 years ago,
isn't it?
Yeah, 18 months ago. So that's going to be an exciting. To your point of how it makes you feel walking up to it, I think anyone who's walking up to
I think Alfa's always good at that, aren't they?
Yeah.
Even that funny little baby SUV thing. What is it? Tonale.
Yeah,
the
that looks it looks great. It doesn't drive particularly well, but it's sort of something out of the ordinary, isn't it? So you can make more of a
junior. That one looks good for a small, as good as a small crossover can.
Well, also with the Stelvio and Giulia, you walk up to them and you feel this is going to be different to a 3 Series or an X3 or a Q5 or something.
We've been running a Giulia on fast fleets long term, and it is one of those cars after you lock it and you turn away and look back one time and you shoulder at it.
And people always talk to you when you're in those cars.
Yeah, definitely.
They'll always come and ask you what it's like because they're curious, but they need a bit more encouragement to take the plunge often. But
that 33 Stradale, I think, is going to be it's that anticipation. You just wanted to drive it from the first time you saw it, isn't it? I think it would be quite a restrictive drive, knowing our friends at Alfa and how they tie themselves in knots with these things. But
and then what have we got? Got another cool mid-engine thing, haven't we, with a A110?
Yes, another A110, another derivative of a great car, which I don't think you can complain about, is it? It's not a bad thing at all.
It's a lot of money, though, isn't it? It's going to have to be... I know it's a very specialised car, and they've already got quite a cult following, haven't they?
The A110 R is like double the price of the base.
It's a big step, isn't
it?
But I can't wait to drive it, because if it's half as good as you'd hope it's going to be, it's going to be brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like it's... With the A110 from day one, they've always had this plan, whether they have or not, of we're going to continuously develop it and evolve it to be the ultimate.
They've been quick to respond, haven't they, to the way people have reacted to the car, even if they didn't plan it quite how it's panned out. They've managed to sustain sales on the car without actually changing it significantly for a lot of its life.
And I think it's one of those cars, isn't it? If you were to drive is there such a thing as a standard A110 now? I get confused with all the special editions and stuff.
I think they still do sort of base
just
model,
an A10.
just under £50,000, I think.
And it still feels fantastic. And
a lot of them have got Pookie's bits on them now anyway.
Yeah.
So,
the rarest ones are the standard ones, rather than the ones with the Life A110 bits on them.
Yes.
But another Alpine that I'm interested in driving, and you've driven it, is the A290, which, yes, it's an electric car, but it seems to be... It's the right car for what people have been asking for from an EV, small-ish in EV and modern crash test world.
It feels right-sized, and so much of the charm of the Renault 5 that it's based on is still there in the Alpine, but it
and
looks
the people
great.
that have done it, and the way they've communicated how they've built it, and the reasons why they've done what they've done, speak to us. I always find with electric cars generally, they're not talking to me.
No.
They're just... And I'm sort of have a passing interest and an appreciation for like a Polestar or something. They're nice things to drive, but as a brand, I think Alpine have done a great job.
Yeah,
I mean the benchmark for throttle response in inverted commas is the A110. They want it to respond like a petrol engine in terms of, and the same when you lift off the throttle. You can wind up the regen, so it does a bit of a kind of one pedal thing, but in its normal mode it feels much like a traditional warm hatch or hot hatch that we're used to.
That's interesting. So do you feel it was closer to a warm-ish hatch?
For me, it's a warm hatch rather than a hot hatch. I mean, the launch was in Mallorca, so we drove it on some really nice twisting roads there and some dual carriageway stuff. We did run the battery pretty flat pretty quickly on the dual carriageway.
Nothing else from you and Aston.
Well, yeah, heavy right foot and an encouraging,
just one more run,
encouraging co-driver.
Yeah.
But I actually enjoyed it more on the track than on the road. We went to a little twisting racetrack. I think you've driven it, Dickie, in a Formula E car.
Yeah.
Which
it's like a big go-kart track, isn't it?
It is, really? Yeah. It's like a sort of supersized kart track, and the car felt brilliant around there. Really predictable. Does lift off oversteer in a French hatch kind of way, which is really nice. But on the roads, for me, it just felt a bit more remote than some of the Renault Sport hatches that we know and love, some of the Clios and Meganes.
How was it compared to the Hyundai, which also
the
puts itself
Hyundai
up as a driver's car?
Yeah,
that's a size up, is it? Does
it
feel a size up?
It does, yeah. It feels almost like a small SUV, like a crossover more than a hatch.
It is big. But then the Renault is quite big.
It is quite big. If you actually park one next to a Clio or something, you realise actually this isn't that small a car.
Yeah, I think after wow, it's a small car. That's because everything else is massive these days, isn't it?
And the design team have done such a great job of sort of the optical illusion of it looking like a little two-door.
And the reality is, you see it in real life next to something you've got the scale of.
Yeah, you need to park it next to something for scale, but
Hyundai went after that sort of driver interaction and connection, didn't they?
It's a totally different kettle of fish, the Hyundai. It's kind of they've used a lot of the EV, like you said. EVs often, the way they're engineered is quite different, and this one it's a bit more, I don't want to say gimmicky because there is real substance behind it, but it's got more of a sort of instant wallop of electric torque.
I think it's all the things Alpine was saying they didn't at the workshop, so we don't want it to have that makes you feel sick punch of acceleration, and we don't want to contrive any weird noises, or it has to be authentic. And the Hyundai's
they've taken two polar opposite approaches,
which doesn't mean either's wrong.
No, I've got to say I really enjoyed driving the Hyundai. It was genuinely exciting to drive. It felt like almost like a modern Mitsubishi Evo or something in some ways, the way it can do the sort of four-wheel drive stuff it can do. And then the Renault, or the Alpine I should say, is much more of a traditional front-driven classic hatch. So I think they're both great in different ways.
I think the Alpine's probably they've kept left some headroom in it as well, haven't they? So they can turn it up and make a more aggressive.
And they're going to do that really nutty version, aren't they? The really expensive one that looks like a Group B.
Like a mid-engined turbo.
It looks like a mid-engine Renault 5.
Yeah, it looks like they've learned from the A110, haven't they? That you start off and then you just give yourself the headroom to be able to evolve and react to what people want and do some specials. But it just seems, I don't know, I've got this in my head that Renault might have almost saved the EV with the Renault 5 more so. Yes, it's big still, but perception is it's a small, and it's designed for purpose, and it does what you expect a small electric car to do. It's got good range. It looks cool. It's not an anomalous crossover.
It's a likeable thing, isn't it? Same way that lots of people that maybe had fallen out of love with cars generally all bought Mini Coopers and Mini Cooper S's and things when BMW reinvented that. I think it's potentially that moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an ordinary car that's not.
Yeah. Well, just seeing the reaction to it and the people that are talking about it and looking at getting one, they've never spoken about any electric car like it before, because it's the car of the moment. It's just been cursed today, the day we record, because it's just been given the European Car of the Year, so it will fall flat on its face.
So it should be shit, really, shouldn't it?
Renault's got a history. Was it 9 and 11 were Car of the Year as well? Right. Remember those? No.
There's a long list of terrible Car of the Year winners, aren't there? But I think it's what, if we wind back a decade or so, it's what we all thought electric cars would be before they all ended up being big SUVs for reasons of packaging batteries and getting range and also margins, all the reasons they've ended up going the way they've gone.
Also, everything else is a small SUV as well.
That's true,
the Alpine, the 290, I think it's going to be an intriguing car this year to get as much
UK test.
Yeah.
Right, come on. We're still not out of the A's yet.
Let's move to B then.
Quick whistle stop tour through what could be the
so there's two cars coming from BMW that we're aware of this year. One is the M3 Touring CS, which, interesting, M3 and M4 CS have impressed us to a point, but not as much as the 5 and the 2.
I think they're great in isolation, but when you drove them with other cars, they don't have
they
that last bit of magic, do they?
Yeah, it's just a bit edgy, aren't they? But just a bit too bright.
I think it's the things M want to do to those cars is great, and it's what we want, but the size of the car and the mass of the car and the power delivery, they're super torquey, aren't they? And they only seem to really work when they've got an aggressive tyre.
Yeah.
So when they're in this sort of window, they're great, but if it's cold or wet, or you sort of start to get slightly sweaty.
Or it's a Wednesday.
palms. Yeah. But maybe the touring, perhaps.
Yeah.
You're in a different
mindset, isn't
different headspace, I think. So and they might not
Maybe they'll
make it quite so
calibrate
much of a
suspension.
headbanger.
And then there's the other one, is the M2 CS. Again, another former E-Coty winner. It could work.
Go either way, couldn't it?
Yeah.
It could be incredible, or it could be.
I just remember that car not being edgy. It was really approachable.
Yeah, on the previous generation car.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of,
absolutely.
It was a very good car.
Ferrari. F80 we've spoken about, haven't we?
Yeah.
And clearly we're going to be fighting over who gets to drive that.
Yeah, people will be putting their CV down. Well, I've driven. Well, it'll be you, won't it? I drove them all last time. But yeah, so Roma's up for replacement, which doesn't feel old enough.
It feels too soon, doesn't it? I love the Roma, great.
It's lovely looking.
Yeah.
Is that going to be a hybrid? Is that going to be their first hybrid, or are they going to do like a
296
F8 Tributo, and there'll be a sort of mild update for a short period, and then the new car will come out quite quickly? I don't know,
because they've got. I suppose depends whether they put the 296. They can make the 296 powertrain work in a front
Drop that
engine,
in,
or whether they need a stopgap while they develop a new front engine hybrid powertrain to go in Roma and whatever replaces V12. But the V12 seems to be carrying on as a non-hybrid for as long as possible. So, it'd be interesting to see what what they do with Roma. And then the other one, which is, what do we call it? Because we just default to calling every hot mid-engine Ferrari a Speciale replacement, even though they've had pieces.
So it could be a Pista or Scuderia or
Challenge.
Challenge.
Could be a Challenge Stradale.
But that's due potentially this year, 296.
It's going to be a pretty awesome thing, isn't it? I mean, the regular 296 is fairly mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So.
And you just drove the race car.
I drove 296 Challenge car, which is, and James drove the equivalent McLaren.
The Artura trophy.
Yeah, and they sort of exist in this parallel universe that we'd probably all rather be in, where they're not hybrid. So you've got these cars that you've never experienced without hybrid, stripped out, turned up, just with a pure ICE engine, and it's really, really good.
Yeah,
like really, really
the
good.
The McLaren's great too. They're really good.
So I kept saying, you could just put some Challenge Stradale badges and a number plate on this, and they're going, no. So I don't know. I'm excited about whatever the hot 296 is, because the regular one, I don't know. I think we've become conditioned to the higher performing model, whereas 25 years ago, if you just drove a 355, it was great, and that was as much as you were ever going to get. But I think, if it's a Speciale or a Stradale or whatever it is, 296, I think that extra attitude will be. It'll wake the car up. It'll make it more exuberant and more expressive, I think. So that should be quite a thing.
Yeah.
Something else that is already proven to be quite a thing is the Mustang GTD, which has set this remarkable Nürburgring time. You spoke to the guys just before Christmas, didn't you?
Yes,
I did. Set the time. And
they're actually a little bit frustrated. They said, I can't remember the exact phrase, but they're proud but not satisfied, I think, was the number of it, because every time the weather's affected it, basically. Yeah. So they say there's still more time in the car. They're going to have another go in the spring. But it's already very quick. I think, off the top of my head, it's quicker than a standard 911 GT3. Yeah. Not as quick as a GT3 RS, but we all know the GT3 RS is a kind of phenomenal miracle of nature, that car, isn't it? So it's kind of Multimatics projects in conjunction with Ford. They've worked together on it. It's almost a kind of road legal version of their GT3 race car, but with some of the stuff that's banned by race regulation, so active aero,
DRS and all sorts, isn't it?
So it looks great as well.
Essentially, they're at that point that most of us get to with PlayStation.
Yeah.
The ideal.
All the sliders.
We'll run out of credits to put more things on it.
They got 2 seconds that they could find if they can put all the best bits of their laps together.
Or just it stops raining, maybe.
The Mante 911's
Yeah.
MR GT3 RS has just done
Oh my God,
been doing its run, and that looks ridiculous. Like, they're two completely opposing ways of achieving a lap time, I think.
Yeah.
Because the corner speed looks like someone's
Put the video
AI,
on fast
the video
forward.
on, yeah. So I think that, that's going to be. Hopefully, we'll get into that at some point this year as well.
Yeah, it's going to be. It's that thing, is it? There's sort of a faction of people. Oh, Nürburgring lap times don't mean anything, but it's not the lap time that is the focus. It's what's going into the cars, what you're getting as a end product. Just the evolution of whether it's suspension, brakes, tyres, and aero. It's just creating these cars that you couldn't envisage.
I think
15 years
Nürburgring
ago.
might have a little bit of a revival, because we were all bored of it, weren't we? And everyone was going there, and it was getting ridiculous and irrelevant. But I think the automotive industry is so weird, isn't it, at the moment? So I think the ICE-powered projects are the more extreme end of the spectrum, and the only real relevance they have is to achieve something that resonates with everyone. So Nürburgring times are going to get us excited again, I think.
Yeah.
And it's still a benchmark for most things, isn't it? It's quite a test for a EV to manage to deploy all its performance and not have a meltdown before it finishes the lap. So, we need to skim.
Well, talking of EVs, let's do two at once because they're from the same house, effectively. So Genesis and Hyundai. So Genesis have got their GV60 Magma, which is a version of their Ioniq 5N, basically, of Hyundai's, and Hyundai are doing their Ioniq 6N. So you know what the 5N's like. The Genesis will benefit from everything they've done, but the reason I put Genesis on there is because they've announced they're going to Le Mans, which for an EV-only brand...
It's so confusing. I'm quite easily confused, but it is quite a confusing thing to do, isn't it?
And then they've built an X-Grand Berlinetta concept that's going to run as a demonstration car at Bathurst with Jackie Hicks.
Yeah.
It's this weird four-seater...
He's a Genesis brand ambassador now, by the way.
But yeah, it's just that weird... Well, it's great, the more people that want to go to Le Mans and build these crazy concepts, but you think, well, are you having to do that to try and get people into the brand to buy the EV version and doing performance EVs? But we know, from, as you've just said, on the 5N, it's not just we need to do a fast EV. The engineering that goes into it creates some...
I think they're having fun with the cars, aren't they? They're having to play
be...
around with it, or not play, sort of demeans it, doesn't it? But they're exploring how you might translate the things that excite us in ICE cars into an EV, aren't they? Which is to be commended, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
They're all talented people, particularly the Hyundai guys at Nürburgring. They've made some amazing stuff, haven't they? Great
in a very short space of time.
Standing start.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal.
Right. Well,
next one is an SUV. It's Defender Octa, which I think we can't talk about how it drives because this will go out before the embargo, which lifts on the 20th of October, if you want to know what a 600 plus horsepower Defender's like.
20th of October?
January. Where are we? It's long Christmas.
This is
That's a long embargo.
Yeah, no, 20th of January. I don't know where that came from.
Well, I'm very excited about the Octa. I think it'll be one of the most exciting cars of the year, I think, actually.
Certainly looks like it. The bits of footage from the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
It's going for it.
Handles the curbs pretty well, do you think?
Yes, but I think you're right. That's going to be a fascinating car and surprise a lot of people, I think, in 2025.
Yeah, I love they're doing it, and I think if it's anything like Project 8.
Well, the team behind it, you won't be surprised to hear, is the people that did Project 7 and Project 8. That's the kind of car to expect.
It's going to be cracking then, isn't it?
Yeah, it should be good. Lamborghini, anyone want to have a go at pronouncing the...
Tiramisu. Temerario?
I don't think that's close enough.
The Huracan replacement.
That's the one. The Next Gallardo. Drive that later in the year. Another mid-engine car.
Yeah, V8s this time.
V8,
replacing the really iconic V10 that was such a big part of the Gallardo and then Huracan. But this is going to rev to 10,000 RPM, 900 brake horsepower. Well, it's a hybrid, so 900 bhp total. I think it's something like 789 bhp off the top of my head from the engine alone.
It's still quite good.
Yeah, it's fairly healthy, isn't it? And a flat...
isn't that more than any V10 output, wasn't it, in a Huracan?
Yeah, comfortably.
Yeah,
comfortably.
Yeah.
Well, the Aventador was 700 and, it's walking Aventador.
Yeah.
So
What will it sound like as well? Because a V8 doing that amount
Yeah,
of revs.
they have. They've released some video sort of footage of the engine with. It sounds to my ears quite odd, but that's through a laptop speaker. So our colleague Sam, it's a flat plane crank. This one, yeah.
Your favourite, John?
Well, we had that. The M3 had a V8 that revved to 8,000, and so did the RS4. They were fabulous engines. Yeah, it sounded really good.
Well, I know Lamborghini's tuned this so it doesn't develop peak power till you pass 9.5, so there will be a reason to rev it out.
To go there.
Yeah.
I think there's some footage on or some sound clips on our social media channels, probably Instagram, because when Sam went to see the car revealed, we got some recordings of it. But it's dependent on what your speakers are like. But yeah, that's going to be interesting of how it sounds, because that's what a Lamborghini is all about, isn't it? Noise.
And that V10 sounded pretty special, didn't it?
Yeah, more special than any R8 for some.
Yeah, it sounded like sort of two Group B Quattros in duet. I think. It's really cool.
Staying in Italy, Maserati MC20 GT Stradale. I think that will be a
Henry drove the race car.
Henry drove the race car, didn't he? Said it was really impressive of transforming from a quite heavy, was it 1,700 kilos when we put it on some scales, the road car. The Stradale will be, I think, it's the fact they're doing it. I think with Maserati, they're not in the strongest position of doing these things, but to do it, they clearly know that there is a market and an audience for these cars, which is what you need. You need the halo cars, don't you? So I think that will be.
Do we know when that?
I think we'll be driving that sooner than we think, possibly in the
springtime.
So that'd be an exciting car to.
Has the standard car sold well, or is this just something to get the interest back up?
No, sadly, I think.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing, isn't it? If you're, as we touched on with the Aston Martin, if you're in that mid-engine supercar world, your first port of call is Ferrari, and then you're probably into McLaren, and I think
Lamborghini.
You've got Lamborghini dropping into there as well. They've got those three, and you're trying to get into that market and you're not known for doing mid-engine supercars. So, I think there's some great bargains to have for MC20s.
Oh man, you see the prices of nearly new cars. Wow.
I mean, that's for everyone at the moment.
So it's the curse of car of the year. I think you'll find.
Yeah. No, it's a shame, isn't it? I couldn't tell you when I last saw one on the road.
I've never seen one on the road.
That wasn't a press car, probably. Yeah. But no, shame.
Yeah, if you want a bargain, look at an MC20. Well, before we turn over, should we have a quick break? Have some lemon curd and Biscoff.
Good.
Oh God.
Good choice.
Yeah, we do.
Great.
And we'll see you after this short break. Who knew? Lemon curd and Biscoff biscuits. What a combination.
Is that how you're going to open the...
I've just opened it.
We've
just
already
ruined
started.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Welcome back, everyone. As you just heard, lemon curd and a Biscoff biscuit. Surprisingly good. Yeah, even Miguel sat behind the camera, who we had to force it down, came back for seconds.
Yeah.
So
taste sensation.
Yeah.
Heard it here first.
You did.
Thanks, Dave and Lisa.
Right, let's get back into 2025's cars, stuff that's coming through.
Where were we? Mercedes.
We've got Maserati, so we're now on Mercedes, who are putting a V8 back into their CLE 63. Can't think why. Has anyone driven a C60? Oh, you've driven a C63.
I've driven a C63. It's got so many modes. I mean, I had it for a day and a bit, and I think I needed about 2 weeks to actually work my way through all the modes in it. It's an amazing car in the right setting, but it's just so... Well, I think Henry described it as tech heavy and heavy, and it is both of those things. And
I think it's before the break we were talking about MC20 and values, and has anyone bought one? I think you could apply the same for C63. So
I'm sure if you wanted a discount, I'm sure they could arrange that for you.
So sticking a V8 back into the CLE, which is the coupe, isn't it? I'll get this the right way round. I think the front end is an E-Class and the back end is a C-Class, which I'm pretty sure in the 80s we called that a cut and shut and it wasn't allowed. But I think car manufacturers can now get away with it. So that's how it can have the V8 in the front, because it's got the room.
Right.
Whereas the C-Class, there isn't enough room, is what Mercedes would always tell
Smart
us.
like a mullet. Business at the front, party
At
at
the back.
Yeah.
So they never planned to do it, basically, did they?
Yeah, they never
They
planned
had
it.
to marry the two up.
So yeah, that would be a coupe and a convertible, I'm guessing. Some form of hybrid. But does it need to have a plug? Looking at what legislation is saying about plug-in hybrids and mild hybrids, and you would wonder. Yeah, they've got a plug-in hybrid powertrain, which you've driven in GT63s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't go anywhere near those last year, but I'm looking forward to trying those.
The
This
63s.
year. It sounds
Yeah,
like a interesting car. Like, super impressive thing from
Yeah.
what John said.
yeah. That GT is world's longest name, isn't it? GT.
Yeah.
GT63 SE Performance all in capital letters. That's
E-performance, that's
yeah.
the key bit, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we touched on it in the previous podcast when you drove it, but that's an impressive powertrain.
It's 800 horsepower, yeah. So
But the badge weighs an extra 300 kilos by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
so-
offset by the badge. Yeah.
Although it won't surprise you to hear it doesn't work in an S-Class. The S63 E-Performance.
So not enough space.
You've taken away all the good bits of an S-Class, and you've added all the stuff that you never think you don't expect an S-Class to have, which is a huge amount of performance and quite a brittle ride, and
Yeah.
you want an S-Class just to be totally silent and stuff. So yeah, it doesn't work, but you wouldn't expect it to. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do with the because the CLE 53 is a good car. It doesn't blow you away, and you always feel like there's more to be had from that car when we drove it earlier last year.
I think
So-
AMG's always used to be such a clear proposition, didn't they?
Yeah.
And now I'm a bit. We had this conversation earlier. It's probably for another podcast, but just naming policies and protocols, and I have no idea what I'm following most of the time. If it's an Audi
45,
whatever,
yeah.
or a M40i something BMW, I don't know what they are.
No.
Which is half
Probably a
the trouble,
3-cylinder
but-
hybrid diesel with a 2-speed gearbox, or a straight 6 with a manual. You never know, do you?
But yeah, I think some of those, the AMG and M, those performance arms are slightly muddled now, aren't they? Because they're the brand's being applied to all kinds of things that maybe some are really suitable and some are wholly unsuitable. But
I think BMW have got the blend kind of right. You know what an M3 still is, and an M4 and an M5 and an M2. They've applied it to the SUVs that don't seem
I
to
think
make
yeah,
sense.
and then the electric stuff.
Yeah.
again is
So yeah, AMG might sort of do well just to look at what BMW M have done and keep it quite straightforward and simple, because they're the halo cars, so you want them to be clearly defined as something rather than try and make it work for everything. I don't think that works as much. We're talking to BMW Mini, new Cooper, John Cooper Works coming this year, auto only apparently, but petrol. Last GP3 was quite a forgettable GP.
should have been mega, shouldn't it?
Shouldn't have been, but it just wasn't. I think, was that because the original GP and the GP2 were so good?
It was so extra special.
And your expectations up here, and the 3 was just a little bit more normal with the body kit rather than...
It was very quick. I do remember driving it and being quite...
I think it prioritised speed over enjoyment, didn't it, actually? And there's less engagement because it was auto only, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, whenever I see one, I think, wow, it should have the same... it should have been a GR Yaris kind of experience, shouldn't it? We should all be raving about that.
Yeah, sort of got
Mini
very...
GP,
sort of arrived, got kind of a... so what? And then disappeared again, and you don't see it. But when you see a GP2 or an original GP, you're like, wow, got to get one of them. But as you say, it should have been a GR Yaris. And
This is their chance to hopefully
yeah,
come up with something we like again.
yeah. Talking of something we like and people we like, Morgan. There's a new +6 coming. There's not much info about it at the moment. We plan to go down and see them in the next couple of weeks to find out more. But we've seen... It was back in 2019, isn't it? We had a +6 on Car of the Year.
Yes. It was very hairy.
Very hairy. But then what we've seen, with the +4 on Car of the Year
This year.
last year, that evolution and that development they've done, and they listen to everyone's feedback and they're continually evolving those cars. I think it's going to be a...
Well, I think
We're
we've
looking
probably
forward
got
to
a
that.
fairly good idea of what the replacement will look like.
That is one of the guaranteed.
Yeah.
Or we think it's one.
Or
of the
they might
guaranteed.
surprise you. They might look like a Cybertruck. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
It's actually a hatchback.
yeah, I think they're an interesting brand, aren't they? The cars are really nicely put together, and they're totally different to anything else.
Yeah, and they've got that partnership with BMW that has given them those sort of reach into the shelf of which powertrains you need.
They just sort of quietly go about their business, don't they? But like you say, I think they listen to customers and media feedback on what people want from the cars. They've certainly improved them. You know, every time we've got into one, they feel better and more fun and more connected. And so this one, really.
You've been down a couple of times to see them, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. But the pitch the first time I went down was we bought on a chap called Matt Hole, who is leading most of the development.
Yeah.
Who his background is electric, so that was why, a couple of years ago when we talked to all the specialists, Morgan looked best placed with Matt and his experience to take things forward, and they showed us a Morgan three-wheeler, which they were using basically as a test bed to prove their processes. But at the same time, they were looking at the dynamics, and I think we're seeing more on the dynamics than we are on the electrics at the moment, which is great because it's been a long time. Morgan has always been. They could always get away with it because, it's what the car looks like, isn't it? You don't expect a modern experience.
Yeah, they revelled in that sort of anachronistic, old school build methods, didn't they?
And for years and years. But now, it makes the cars, the drivetrains are bang up to date because they're BMWs, and now the dynamics. It's not taking away anything from the car. It's actually making the car more usable, more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's a reminder, isn't it, of an engineer's imperfection is often the thing that
character.
It's the thing that we'll remember and enjoy, but it's quite hard sifting through, keeping the right sort of imperfection and ironing out the.
Well, that's it, isn't it? You can expose yourself to criticism, which is totally valid, but at the same time, that's why people love the car, just because it's not like everything else. It's not buff to a high sheen in terms of dynamics.
Yeah, no, that'll be another fun one, won't it?
Yeah, hopefully they'll also maybe speak to some other tyre suppliers than Avon. It would be that's the thing.
It's a limiting factor certainly on the smaller
wheels.
They look so nice on the 15-inch rim, though. That's the problem, isn't it?
Great.
Nobody makes
and the higher profile.
Yeah, nobody makes decent.
Well, I think also
contemporary.
Avon is on its way out anyway.
Yeah.
Because Caterham has had to change its tyre supply because Avon is not supplying anymore. They've gone to Toyo. But the problem is that size. But, Morgan does make pretty good volumes. So
the 6 is on 17s, isn't it? I think,
isn't it? Yeah.
So
I think the ones we had in Car of the Year in 2019 was the ones that you bonfired.
I think they were Avons as well,
weren't they? But they were rock hard, and even on last year's car, was it the Plus 4? It was the tyre, was the.
I think it's something they could address, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think they are. You can't go to all the effort of changing your dampers and refining your geometry and then put a tyre on that doesn't deliver on those improvements. So
what we've got next? Sublime to the ridiculous. Porsches.
Well, the
911s.
Perpetual
galore.
underachievers, you mean? The ones that, Well, when are they going to get their act together? There seems to be, I think, another year of, they're in that model cycle, aren't they, with 992 generation of 911 of everything being updated. So we've seen GT3, and they'll be driving that very soon.
Yeah, James is driving that in a few weeks, isn't he?
Yes.
A week or so.
So that's going to, I think, we've spoken to Andreas Pruniger about, haven't we? It's that philosophy now, isn't it, with GT3? They've stopped chasing power, and it's just honing and keep polishing this perfect pebble almost.
This is, what are they going to do? I can't think, from when we did Car of the Year with the GT3 RS, where do you go from there? It's not as if it's deficient in one particular area. Which
I thought that with the last one, though. I thought, how on earth are they going to up the ante from this? And
I did Andy a massive disservice in a column years ago, which I'm still haunted by, and he did take me to task over it, which was fair enough. But I think I'd said, what on earth is left in the car, and then they did the 991 Gen 2 RS, which was amazing,
incredible,
and very different to the previous Gen car. So I think they know the car inside out, don't they? And they know what their customers want So
and then there's such a long list of people that will buy anything with a GT3 badge. Not that they will just do anything for the sake of it, but if you've got that customer loyalty and demand for the car, it probably gives you a little bit more freedom from an engineering side, isn't it? We can do this because people trust us to do it right, and there will be people to buy it. We don't need to rip up the rule book to try and find new customers.
No, so that,
but they don't rest on their laurels either. We know that. So
that's going to be awesome. And then what have we got?
So I think if you look at the model cycle, probably much later at the end of the year, a new 911 Turbo is going to be due. Whether we drive it this year, I'm not so sure. You just got to look at what manufacturers can get out in time, isn't it? But with the GTS now being T hybrid, I think it's safe to say that next turbo.
Well, we'll drive more of those this year, won't we? Fours and twos.
Fours and twos are coming through. Carrera T.
And drive them in the UK rather than launch conditions. So that'll be interesting.
Interesting. They just announced the Carrera S as well, which is the smallest seller in the UK.
Oh, really?
Is the S?
Because I always thought that was kind of the sweet spot.
No, I think since they brought in the GTS,
customers
always go for. And I think the
Especially
salesmen are obviously very good at, so if you can afford an S, why don't you have a GTS? But that's quicker acceleration than the GT3 or the outgoing GT3.
Because of the hybrids.
The S is
it's about the same.
It's about the same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
it's probably got more torque.
Right. Yeah.
So the S is
DSG on it. It's just going to do it, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah. So the S is non-hybrid. I did read the story.
I like the confidence with which you made that statement, Stu.
And to leave the GTS at the top of the pile. So.
Disregard what I just said then.
Or disregard what James said, or disregard what I said. But yeah, so I think the 911 family, obviously this year, all gets refreshed. So we're going to have lots of variants coming through. What's interesting, I think, from Porsche, of course, is the story and the noise around what happens with Boxster Cayman, which is going full EV, as we know.
Or is it?
Well, I think they're so far down. It is.
Or is it yet?
But the market is in such a state of flux at the moment.
They always said there would be a transitional period, didn't they? Where the ICE cars would stay in production, and which I guess is them hedging a little bit,
which they're doing,
and satisfying different markets that don't need to go EV. But
which they're doing with McCann, obviously selling ICE alongside BEV. For their technical term, and I think UK can still sell Boxster Caymans. There's an issue. I think there was an EU issue over some security software that meant they couldn't sell in certain markets. But yeah, they have to. I think every manufacturer, it's not just Porsche. Everyone has to now is looking, which we'll come on in another podcast, won't we? About how you can't force consumers to buy something they don't want, regardless of who you are.
For Porsche, it's a massive play, isn't it? Because we would have, when you say Porsche, we think of 911s and Carrera GTs and racing cars and things, but probably most people, if you say Porsche, would think of a Macan or a Cayenne or a Boxster or a Cayman maybe, but they've had to make a massive decision, haven't they, with their biggest volume Macan and the mid-engine sports car range with their biggest sellers. So
that's going to be fascinating how that plays out this year. And I think it's been under development or in development for so long. It's not as if it's going to be we just stop that now and do a new one with a petrol engine. But you've got to be so careful when you introduce it and how you position it of what it is, because if no one buys it, and
there's no direct rivals in the market. They're kind of the first to fully jump in with a fully electric sports car. I know there's the MG Cyberster, but that's more of a cruiser. Well, yet to drive one myself, but it's.
I saw one in a car park in Peterborough. It might be being on test with one of our rival magazines.
Okay.
And what surprised me was how huge
it's big, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the size of a Maserati coupe.
Right. Okay.
And it looks a bit like that at the front. Yeah. And then, just leaving the car park, a little MGF came in.
Half the size. Yeah.
Picking up. So,
sagging on its suspension, presumably.
Wait for its head gasket to fail. What other cliches can we throw around?
Those are the days. Stu, Toyota, they've done no end, haven't they? Just like literally overnight.
Overnight, yeah. So we prepared a list of what to talk about, and then overnight Toyota said, by the way, here's 3 new GR Yaris's. Although... Yarai. Yeah.
Sounds like a Geordie or something.
So one of those is an aero package for the existing production car. I'm not sure whether we're going to get that in Europe and the UK. Hopefully we do. It looks pretty wild.
They did one for the GT86 years back, didn't they? They did an aero package.
Is that a retrofitting thing? Or?
Could be a dealer fit thing. From the pictures, it's a big roof spoiler and diffusers and
to make it look like a rally car.
Make it look like the trade on that rally
Give
car.
it a load of drag.
Yeah.
Use a bit more petrol.
Yeah, slow it down to 110 miles an hour max.
Yeah. Shorten the gear even further. And then they've done the GR Nür, which is for a Nürburgring race series they're going to do. And then interestingly, is the M Concept, which is a mid-engined GR Yaris with a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo engine, which is a development mule.
So that's just a mule
for the next MR2.
That's exciting.
Which is exciting. Which is Toyota, and I personally don't think they get the recognition and credit for what they actually do in developing and just trying things and being quite open about what they're trying and what they're looking to achieve. And it's remarkable. You think they don't need to do GR86 and Supra and Yaris and all that, but
that was Akio Toyoda though, wasn't it? That's what he instilled in them, was to
push themselves,
be a passionate brand and not this faceless sort of machine that just pumps out mainstream cars.
Yeah. The world's best-selling car. Yeah, the Corolla.
Well, there's hope that the GR Corolla, which has been available in the US, will come to Europe potentially, which would be great if it does. Another rival to a Golf R and A45, and if it's from those that have driven it in the US, it's in the same spirit as a GR Yaris. So that would be fascinating if they bring that across. And Supra's has been an interesting sort of partnership with BMW, and there was that little bit of tension when they both came out that.
Whose car is it?
Whose car is it, and who's responsible for the bits that don't work, and who's responsible for the good bits? But it's a front engine, rear drive coupe, isn't it? That it's the cars that
I think the Supra did a better job of catching your eye and looking like a car you'd want to own. The Z4s always look a bit big and sort of more like an American market.
Yeah, just a bit unresolved
car somehow.
You see some of the Supra, you think, well, that's a good decision. Even having one over, I think Cayman dynamically is a superior car, but the Supra just feels special, isn't it, when you see one? And the GR86, the transition from GT to GR86 was huge, wasn't it?
Yeah, different car, isn't it?
Totally different car. But a shame that dies. That's this year, isn't it? I think for most markets due to the crash legislation.
Crash regs. They'd have to design a whole new roof for the car, which they would never get the money back that they'd have to spend doing that.
Just don't crash them, people.
Or Toyota, just do it anyway. You've just done a mid-engine concept Yaris that you don't need to build. But that's going to be fascinating. How that GR it's established now and what they do and keep it going. And I'm sure at some point there'll be a GR Land Cruiser with some crazy V8.
That'd be great. Defender Octa rival.
Well, yeah.
The thing with Toyota, it's not just these models that they're throwing out. It's looking at hydrogen. It's alternative ways to to get to net zero.
They're very agnostic, aren't they, in terms of how they.
Good word of the podcast. I think that is, James.
And stick with Toyota as well. There's also, as we mentioned earlier, it's only 2 years into its sort of rumoured return of the LFA, so it's got another 8 years to go before we actually see it. But another LFA with a 900 horsepower V8 hybrid.
I think we'll see it as a race car first, won't we? I think certainly the stuff that's the footage of development laps and things, it looks like a GT3 car, so it'd be a non-hybrid race car.
As with the Artura and the 296.
But if it is to those regs, it would have to be a production-based engine, so that would give us a big clue as to
what it's going to be. Do they need to do it? Probably not, but the fact they are is fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. And going racing with it, there's been an RCF racing in WEC, hasn't there, in 24, which has been fascinating.
They've supported for years.
So that's fascinating what they're doing, and it makes you wonder why other. And it helps being the biggest car company in the world.
They've got the resources to spread it across.
But then you look at Volkswagen Group, who are the second biggest, but appear to be in turmoil, and their model.
Well, they're in a massive mess, aren't they?
Don't seem to know what they're doing, and don't just having had 20, 30 years of just being able to now what cars people want in what sectors from what brands have suddenly gone, we don't know what we're doing. We haven't mentioned the likes of Audi today, as they sort of odd numbers are ICE cars and even numbers are EVs, but they're in that group sort of merry-go-round of just platform and we just top hat put and what does an Audi look like or a Volkswagen and stuff, which is a real shame because they've had 20 years of producing some really remarkable cars, whether it was a R8 or a Skoda Yeti. But that kind of innovation and
it's just got homogenised, hasn't it, across all the marks really. Homogenised. How did that rank against
pretty good.
agnostic?
Yeah,
I think that's
it's a tie at the moment for Word, isn't it?
and then the other brands we haven't touched on, not when people say it's because we're anti-EV and stuff, but apart from Maserati and Alfa, but the core Stellantis brands, Vauxhall, Peugeot, Citroën, DS, do they even... You're not expecting anything from them, and it's no surprise if they don't do anything. It's a bit of a shame, really, particularly with Peugeot having PSE 208 GTI, 308, 508. They've got a WEC programme, but nothing to...
I think it's quite a hard job, isn't it? I don't know. We represent a kind of enthusiast niche, don't we? But whereas 10 years ago, maybe certainly 15 years ago, the names you mentioned, Vauxhall, etc., would still be on our radar because there'd be a Corsa VXR or that's a shout out for Miguel, our sound man. But as soon as those cars disappear, those brands don't even register on they're not on our radar anymore, are they? So our world shrinks and narrows.
But to that point, it goes back even further because we're old farts. But a Mark 1 Focus 1.6 LX was a car that we would drive and go, wow, the base car was really good, but even the base cars just aren't cars that you drive and go, wow, that's a really good car. Our 208 GT was a really interesting car to run for 6 or 7 months because it was really refined and it felt very premium and plush, but no way was it anything like a hot hatch or a warm hatch.
Yeah, GT by name, GT by nature.
But normally the base cars are interesting to drive and not exciting, but if you drive one, you can appreciate the engineering and the development that's gone in it. But some of these brands now there isn't, is it? They're just...
I don't know. I think it's, I know Jeremy Clarkson famously sort of said he's jacked in the car stuff because he's not interested in the sort of next generation of EVs and things. But, I think it's a thing, isn't it? I don't know whether all of us were fully engaged in everything the car industry produced, and now we're blind to half of it because we're not interested in it, don't desire to drive it, and who's coming along behind us in terms of how engaged are people as a mass sort of number of people with cars. I don't know, and therefore how do you make your brand stand out amongst all the others to an audience of people that aren't really engaged with any of it. Those
that are engaged in cars are engaged in, if it's in more volume brands, they're engaged in their older model products, aren't they? There's a disconnect between someone who's got a Corsa VXR or a 306 Rally or something and a current Corsa or a 3008. They don't see them from the same brand, do they? So there's no desire to go, right, I must have the latest because I've loved having this one as a classic and I'll buy my modern. Years ago, if you had an old Ford, your daily car, if you had an old Ford sort of as something in the garage to tinker on and take to shows and things, your daily drive was probably a Mondeo or a Galaxy or something.
I think there was brand loyalty, wasn't there? Which I don't know how much of that is.
I think that's gone
around anymore.
It's disappeared, isn't it?
I wonder if it's a quirk of the times though, because companies have had to kind of homogenise a bit with, especially we'll come on to Stellantis later, but all these big group-wide savings, platform sharing, and then having to, as we said earlier, kind of hedge their bets in terms of EV platforms. hybrid platforms, it leaves less room to kind of make the base car as good as it can be, because there has to be so many compromises.
Yeah, and it's got to work for everything, I guess.
Shall we go back to happier things?
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Should we try and predict what we're going to have on Car of the Year,
Well,
maybe, or some of the highlights?
Predict what's going to be on Car of the Year, and then I want you to name one car that you really want to drive next year that's on this list.
This year,
not next year.
We mentioned 3 911s, so that's 3 Car of the Year contenders.
Yeah.
The GT2
Should we do Car of
really
the Year first? What we think and what we would like to have on Car of the Year. So if you're listening, PRs, can you start getting these cars built for us?
MC20 GT2 Stradale would be pretty nice.
Yeah, Mike, if you can get that now, that'd be great.
Since the base car is a former winner.
Yeah. And the 296 Speciale, Stradale, Scuderia Challenge.
And the Vanquish as well, please.
Vanquish and Valhalla?
We can save Valhalla for the year after. Give Vanquish a go.
Okay, right. So we're up to. So we've got Vanquish. We've got.
Would we have an A290? That's the question.
Wow.
I don't think it's hot enough.
Yeah.
I don't think it's hot enough for me. I think unless they do a hotter version, which I don't think is going to be in time for that.
So maybe another A110 then. The
A110 Ultimate, maybe.
M2CS.
Mustang GTD. I think that would
be great. If we
can
get one, that'd be mega.
Jay, can we have a Mustang GTD, please, for later in the year?
Doesn't matter what colour it is.
Yeah.
Octa. I think we're going to have an Octa, won't we? Great. But then if the Temerario is great, then
we'll have one of them as well.
Crikey, it's going to be a big.
I mean, Revuelto missed out last year, so we could have Revuelto or Temerario.
Yeah, Tiramisu or Revuelto, or Ragu or Tiramisu.
You can't be pudding before you've had your starter, can you?
Yeah, or lemon curd with
Biscoff. I mean, the AMG GTs that we drove at the end of the year, the Pro and the SE Performance.
Yeah, because the Pro just missed out last time because its launch was happening as we were doing the test. So
we've got, and also the V12 Ferrari as well. We've
and the M5 that didn't get in, did it?
M2CS maybe.
Former winner with the previous gen M2CS.
It's going to be a good year.
It's going to be a good year for Car of the Year when we do
it's
that.
Going to have about 80 cars in it at this rate.
That will please finance.
We haven't mentioned the GT3 or Carrera T yet. Wow.
That's quite a lineup of cars, isn't it? And then there's always the stuff that manufacturers surprise us with and just pop out and go, oh, by the way, here's a X, Y, or Z. So, which of those, though, on our list that we've gone through to wrap up, that if you could only drive one,
if you could only, oh bloody hell,
the launch invite comes in, which one are you going to beat your colleagues up?
I'm excited about the Temerario Lamborghini. I think that's going to be a really whether it's amazing or not amazing, either way, it's going to be fascinating to see how it is.
I think how they, as we've mentioned, how they get that character of that V10. Do they try and replicate it, or do they go, no, that's one era, and this is the new era?
I don't know if they can. I wonder if they have to just make it. Yeah,
it'd be fascinating. What about you, John? What's taking?
I'm torn between the Mustang, just because it just looks so wild and it sounds so fantastic, and finding out how Aston have made a mid-engine car with the Valhalla. Yep. So I can't really decide. I'd probably go Mustang just because it's big engine Ford, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
And it is a kind of money no objects, pinnacle product. So,
and I think it's going to look great on the race circuits as well this year.
Yeah. Dickie, what's?
I'd do the Octa, but you've already been on the launch, so I can't do that. But I'm excited about that.
F80.
And F80 is an obvious one, isn't it? But I think the A110 Ultim. I think because we love that car so much and we've spent so much time in them, and they've managed to make a meaningful difference with everyone they've done. So, I'm most excited about that one, I think.
Okay, well, I'll take the 33 Stradale then.
Nice.
Good.
That's settled.
That's that settled. That's that argument done with. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this year again, back for 2025. We will see you next time. Might be next week, or it might be the week after. It depends whether. It depends how organised we are. It's a start
the week after, then.
Week after, yeah. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Dickie, James, John.
Thanks, Stu. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you.